The deadly wildfires in California continue to wreak destruction today. Thousands of acres are burning in more than a dozen active fires across the state. A total of 31 people are known to have died, and more than 230 are still unaccounted for.
Easy, easy, can't see. Just go easy now. Easy.
Dad, the car is heating up. It's going to explode. Oh, Jesus, God, help us.
All right, slow it down. Okay, slow it down so we can see, Jess.
Dad, what if a tree falls on us?
Okay, slow it.
Please, God, help us. Please, God, help us.
Good, you're doing good.
Oh, my God. Dad, we can't get out.
I'm getting out.
She better not be. I've been having her. I got you, dog. Oh!
Tens of millions of people face the threat of flooding, with forecasters predicting the storm system will stall over the region. At least 6 states are under flood watches or advisories. Iowa is especially hard hit, with nearly a third of the state under a flash flood watch through the afternoon.
I've never heard cows beller like that. It wasn't a normal sound. It was a panic that they were in. It was absolutely heart-wrenching. This is the only cow that we found alive. Probably the most humbling thing is knowing that you had absolutely no power to save them. My dad's farmed here for 47 years. He's never seen water here. You know, if we'd ever seen water here, you know, we would not have exposed our animals to it.
In order to fulfill my solemn duty to protect America and its citizens, the United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord So we're getting out.
In November of 2018, federal scientists released a major climate assessment report, which stated that the Earth's climate is now changing faster than at any point in the history of modern civilization, primarily as a result of human activity. The report also states that the severity of future impacts is directly tied to decisions made in the present.
I've seen it, I've read some of it, and I don't believe it. No, I don't believe it. Right now we're at the cleanest we've ever been, and that's very important to me. But if we're clean, but every other place on Earth is dirty, that's not so good. So I want clean air, I want clean water, very important.
Coal burning is the major cause of global warming. The carbon that smokestacks put into the air today stays in the air and accumulates. It will still be contributing to warming more than 100 years from now. Coal smoke produces tiny sulfate particles that turn deadly when they penetrate into the lungs and enter the bloodstream, contributing to respiratory disease, heart attacks, strokes, and asthma, especially in children and in older people.
Never knew we had asthma. There's no asthma in my family. But then here's my 5-year-old granddaughter who has it ever since she was 2. I have a grandbaby that's 1 and an infant that has asthma that needs to be on a nebulizer. Watching my kids not being able to breathe is hard because it can kill you.
I have heard talk of that this is one of the most toxic areas in the country.
When my friends come over to visit, even from out of state, they go, "What is that smell? Why is the sky different over on this side of the freeway as opposed to the other side of the freeway?"
My mother's sister is in remission. She has cancer. My mother's brother died of cancer. My godmother, who lives across the street, also passed away, and she died of cancer. My neighbor across the street died of cancer. My mother passed away in 2003 from lung cancer. My mom was a healthy person. She was a nurse. I'm sorry.
Over the past 3 decades, nationwide asthma rates have more than doubled. And climate change puts those Americans at greater risk of landing in the hospital. As one of America's governors has said, we're the first generation to feel the impact of climate change and the last generation that can do something about it. And that's why I committed the United States to leading the world on this challenge, because I believe there is such a thing as being too late. And today we're here to announce America's Clean Power Plan, a plan 2 years in the making, and the single most important step America has ever taken in the fight against global climate change.
Obama's Clean Power Plan shut down more than 300 old coal-burning power plants and put rules in place to promote the construction of new power-generating plants which use only non-polluting renewable sources of energy. The cost of solar energy in the United States has dropped 80% in the last decade, and the solar industry now employs more workers than the coal, gas, and oil industries combined. But since taking office, the Trump administration has been working to undo the Clean Power Plan and revitalize the coal industry.
I guess they like what we're about to sign, huh?
First, today's Energy Independence Action calls for an immediate reevaluation of the so-called Clean Power Plan. Perhaps no single regulation threatens our miners, energy workers, and companies more than this crushing attack on American industry. Second, we are lifting the ban on federal leasing for coal production. Third, we are lifting job-killing restrictions on the production of oil, natural gas, clean coal, and shale energy. My administration is putting an end to the war on coal. We're going to have clean coal, really clean coal. Okay.
Not only is this administration dropping the requirement for rigorous pollution controls on existing plants and basically allowing them to burn all the coal they want, they are also changing the rules to allow the construction of new coal-burning plants. And to feed the demand for coal, the administration is opening up millions of acres of public lands to new mining. As a result of these energy policy rollbacks, hundreds of millions more tons of carbon emissions will be dumped into our atmosphere. In 2012, in order to reduce overall tailpipe emissions, President Obama reached an agreement with the automobile industry to double fuel efficiency for cars and trucks by the year 2025. Engineers and scientists agreed that getting 54 miles per gallon by then was realistic, and they estimated that these new emission standards would prevent more than 6 billion tons of carbon pollution from getting into the atmosphere. In 2017, President Trump ordered the EPA to roll back the fuel efficiency standards that the auto industry had earlier agreed to with President Obama.
I kept my word. I followed through on my promise, and by the way, many other promises. You've seen what's happened. Many. The assault on the American auto industry, believe me, is over.
Behind the scenes, the oil industry had spent millions of dollars lobbying against limits on tailpipe emissions, and oil executives had promised investors that relaxing emission standards would mean selling up to 400,000 more barrels of gasoline every day. Along with slowing the development of more fuel-efficient cars and making the American auto industry less competitive worldwide, analysts estimate that between now and 2035, these weaker rules will cause an extra 900 million metric tons of carbon dioxide to be dumped into the atmosphere. But as one lobbyist said, Americans should be able to buy the vehicles they prefer.
The Trump administration has taken its third major step to roll back the regulations that are meant to curb the greenhouse gases that cause global warming and climate change. The Environmental Protection Agency today issued new rules making it easier for oil and gas companies to release methane, which is a particularly potent greenhouse gas.
Methane is a heat-trapping gas that is leaked from oil and gas wells. As a cause of global warming, it is 25 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Methane is invisible to the naked eye, but can be detected by infrared cameras. The U.S. oil and gas industry emits 13 million metric tons of methane each year, nearly 60% more than industry estimates, and enough to offset much of the climate benefits of burning natural gas instead of coal. But since the 2016 elections, industry lobbyists have persuaded the Trump administration to eliminate the Obama-era rules that curb and monitor the release of methane into the atmosphere.
The Trump administration announced today it's rolling back parts of the Endangered Species Act, weakening rules meant to protect threatened animals. White House officials say it's part of the effort to ease regulations on businesses and industries like mining, oil drilling, and development. The New York Times reports it this way, quote, "The changes will make it harder to consider the effects of climate change on wildlife when deciding whether a given species warrants protection. They would most likely shrink critical habitats and, for the first time, would allow economic assessments to be conducted when making determinations."
You look at the environmental impact statements, they're just nonsense, okay? Just total nonsense. There's a highway in a state not so far away. The road was a dead straight road, dead straight, so that if you had a rough night, you can go straight. Now it's a road that goes this way because of nesting, different things nesting. Who the hell knows what's nesting, but whatever it is. So the road ends up being twice as long and curving like hell, and unless you're 100% sharp, you're in deep trouble.
"2019 is the year when new oil and gas leases are being auctioned off on 9 million acres of public land in western states. The new head of the Department of the Interior, a former oil and gas lobbyist, is speeding up the process of getting leases into the hands of the oil companies before the 2020 elections, so that drilling will already be underway and harder to stop if the Democrats should win. At only $2 an acre, the big industry companies are rushing to take advantage of what is essentially a giveaway. The chief executive of ExxonMobil announced plans in 2018 to invest more than $220 billion over the next 7 years to substantially increase their oil and gas production and thereby triple the company's profits by the year 2025. For decades, ANWR, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, has been a federally protected, unspoiled, awe-inspiring landscape open to backpackers and hunters, but off-limits for drilling and mining. The Trump administration will now open up all 19 million acres to the oil and gas industry.
The Arctic is at the forefront of opportunity and abundance. It houses 13% of the world's undiscovered oil, 30% of its undiscovered gas, and an abundance of uranium, rare earth minerals, gold, diamonds, and millions of square miles of untapped resources. And its centerpiece, the Arctic Ocean, is rapidly taking on new strategic significance. Steady reductions in sea ice are opening new passageways and new opportunities for trade. This could potentially slash the time it takes to travel between Asia and the West by as much as 20 days.
One day, a friend of mine who's in the oil business called, "Is it true that you have ANWR in the bill?" I said, "I don't know. Who cares? What does that mean? What does that mean?" They said, "Well, you know, Reagan tried. Every single president tried, and not one president was successful in getting it." I said, "You got to be kidding. I love it now." And after that, we fought like hell to get ANWR. He talked me into it.
This executive order reverses the previous administration's Arctic leasing ban. So hear that.
It's not surprising that the Trump administration is going after another set of climate change regulations. President Trump campaigned on this. He specifically campaigned on helping the oil and gas industry. What is sort of surprising and interesting is how effectively and efficiently they're doing these regulatory rollbacks. So much of this administration's policy agenda is dysfunctional or chaotic, whereas the moves to roll back these regulations, particularly on climate change, they're being done correctly. They're going through the right channels. Quietly and under the radar, this piece of the policy agenda is chugging along and making a difference.
Under this administration, we've ended the war on American energy. We've added more than 450 oil and gas rigs nationwide. We finally opened ANWR in Alaska. We approved the Keystone Pipeline. Keystone Pipeline. We got the Dakota Access Pipeline out of a lot of trouble. They had built it, but they had a little problem. They had a river, and they didn't have that permit. I gave it to them. I gave it to them. Dakota Access Pipeline. Again, subject to terms and conditions to be negotiated by us. At the same time, we're strongly protecting the environment. We have to protect the environment. The United States has among the very cleanest air and water in the world. We are the best, and you want that, and I want that. I want clean air and beautiful, crystal clean water, right? We want that. People don't understand that about us. They don't understand that.
According to the United States Refugee Agency, displacement of people linked to climate change is not a future hypothetical. It is a current reality.
Mira, hubo mucha sequía. Las milpas, la mazorquita es pequeña. Yo siempre he pasado la pobreza, pero jamás he querido abandonar mi tierra, porque yo creo que no hay un lugar donde te sientas más cómodo que en tu tierra. Pero igual cuando ya sientes el hambre, que el hambre ya te trae encima, tal vez tus hijos te están exigiendo, papá, quiero comer de tal cosa, quiero comer comida buena, quiero comer carne. Entonces es ahí donde te llenas de coraje y dices, me voy.
Given the oversized role that migration plays in our current political discourse, some activists are asking why there is not more concern about climate change, the one factor that security experts believe will affect migration more than any other. U.S. military leaders and foreign policy experts agree that the growing number of climate refugees will lead to massive political and economic upheaval around the world. Prior to the 2016 election, our government's policies for protecting our environment were based on the evidence of science. This is especially critical when it comes to climate change, the consequences of which we are already experiencing. The current administration has undermined that science by establishing an advisory panel whose mission it is to call into question the scientific consensus behind how and why the planet is warming. William Happer, a member of the National Security Council and a longtime denier of climate science, has been appointed to head the panel.
So you really do see it as a non-problem, not as something worth investing in?
Absolutely. I think not only a non-problem, I see the CO2 is good. You know, let me be clear. I don't think it's a problem at all. I think it's a good thing.
In October of 2018, 91 scientists from 40 countries issued an alarm. They said that if we do not reverse the trend now, and if the Earth's temperature increases more than 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels, the effects upon the world's climate will grow beyond our capacity to deal with them. We will soon pass the point of no return.
The tipping point is the point at which we cross the peak of the hill, and we no longer need to keep pushing to keep the planet moving towards a much hotter place. It will just keep rolling onwards, all on its own. So far, we've only pushed up global temperatures by around 0.8 degrees centigrade. But because of the 40 or 50-year time lag between emissions and temperature rise, the emissions already in the atmosphere commit us to raising temperatures by around another 0.6 degrees over the coming decades, which could easily be enough to place us right at the peak of the hill, or even over it. If we do pass this critical threshold, global temperatures could soar by as much as 6 degrees. If this happens, the natural world will suffer a mass extinction event which will wipe out the majority of the plants and animals with which we currently share the planet. These are extraordinary times. Preventing runaway global warming is the single most important task in all of human history, and it's fallen to us to do it. If we don't, then everything else we work to achieve in our lives will be destroyed or become meaningless. Those who came before us didn't know about this problem, and those who come after will be powerless to do anything about it. But for us, there's still time. We better get a move on though.
We are beginning to experience a collapse of nature's balance. At the same time, we are seeing a breakdown in our world order. Is there anything that can be done to stop this headlong rush toward extinction? Some climate scientists think that we are already too late, but there are many who think we have one last chance. The UN scientists say that the world has just over a decade to get climate change under control. Our personal lifestyle choices do matter, and even more important, it matters that we elect leaders at all levels of government who understand the urgency of the climate crisis. But many may want to do more by joining a number of growing international movements that are saying no to systems that are killing us and yes to the new ways of living together on this earth.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time.
We live in a strange world where children must sacrifice their education in order to protest against the destruction of their future. Where people who have contributed the least to this crisis are the ones who are going to be affected the most. Where politicians say it's too expensive to save the world, while spending trillions of euros subsidizing fossil fuels.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who...
We live in a strange world, where no one dares to look beyond our current political systems, even though it's clear that the answers we seek will not be found within the politics of today. We are now standing at a crossroads in history. We are failing, but we have not yet failed. There is still time to fix this. It's up to us. We live in a strange world. But it's the world that my generation has been handed. It's the only world we've got.
Turning, we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love.